We are going to be going through the priest hall today. I believe it's the last of all of the class halls that we have done. If you missed all the other class hall coverage, make sure it's not.
No.
We're not doing DK.
No, woman. Next week is DK.
We're not doing DK. There's no reason to do a DK hall.
Let's take a vote.
But how am I'm not going to be able to talk about the artifact weapons or the DK lore or none.
I'm so
You're
sad.
Breaking my
Don't rob this man of that he's been saving for all.
I know.
It's so sad. Anyway, moving on. We are doing the priest order hall. If you missed the other order halls, you can go to the YouTube channel. I did pull Lycan's lore and layer that with the order hall so you can see all the past ones that we have covered. The priest order hall is the Netherlight Temple, and it is a Draenei style temple with wings, right? Red Bull gives you wings. It's themed around the shadow and the light. Beautiful hall. You guys are really, really going to enjoy this. Lycan has some beautiful priest lore that he has for you. No, priest lore that I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go and do that now.
All right. So before life began, before even the cosmos took shape, there was light and there was the void. Unfettered by the confines of time and space, the light swelled across all existence in the form of a boundless prismatic sea. Great torrents of living energy filtered through its mirrored depths, and their movements conjuring a symphony of joy and hope. Priests may embrace the light to heal their comrades or smite their enemies, or submit to their darker side to utilize the madness of the void. They have a dedication to the light and a dedication to helping their allies. Now, the first known masters of the light on Azeroth were the Northshire clerics. They were able to aid their allies by healing them and following them into battle. Now, although the humans are most associated by light, or with the light rather, they are by no means the only followers. Every race in Azeroth can be priest as well, except for the orcs. Now, it's speculated that possibly due to their corruption by Sargeras, but there's no confirmation on the matter. Also, as we've discussed in previous lore lessons, we know that the paladins are also able to wield the power of the light. Some of the most notable priests, though, have to be Anduin Wrynn, who I look like today, which is the crown prince of Stormwind. We have Archbishop Alonsus Fowl. He was the former head of the Northshire clerics and founder of the paladins. Velen, prophet of the Draenei. We have Tyrande Whisperin. She is the High Priestess of Elune and the wife of Malfurion Stormrage. And Sen'jin, former leader of the Darkspear Trolls. Anduin, as we know, gets a model update coming into Legion and will most likely have a greater part in the lore. This kid has seen his mother killed, his father kidnapped, his adopted, you want to call her aunt, her city destroyed, almost killed himself and deceived by Garrosh, and yet he still holds on to the ideals of peace. But how far will this peace-loving kid remain that way? That'll be determined coming up in Legion. I have some theory on what might happen and what might become of Anduin, and it's really not pretty, but a little bit more on that later. One of the best speeches I have heard in game was this in Stormwind. It was actually given by Prince Anduin in the book The Tides of War, and sums up pretty much all of the priest's convictions. And he said, "I pray that you fight with courage and decency and honor. I pray that your weapons be guided by the justice of what you do. I urge you to remember, as you go into the heat of battle, to refuse to allow hate to enter into your heart. Keep it sanctuary, a temple to the memory of those who are tragically slain. Remember, at each moment you are fighting for justice, not genocide. Victory, not vengeance. And I know with all my being that if you go into battle with these things so firmly in your heart that no anger, no pain can shake them, we will triumph. Blessings on you, soldiers of the Alliance." And that, like I said, I think that pretty much sums up how the priests feel and their determination on how they actually carry the light with them. The priests and the paladins, we know, are known to follow the light. But what exactly is the light? For years, it was only an essence that was permeating throughout the entire universe. It has recently come to light that the Naru and the light are actually one and the same. As we heard in the opening paragraph that was taken right from the World of Warcraft Chronicles book, as the light swelled throughout the dark beyond, or for lack of a better term, space, the light began to dim in some of the areas. With this, the void began to coalesce. Becoming more and more powerful, the void began actually to push back against the light, eventually causing massive explosions and birthing the universe into existence. This caused pieces of the light to be flung throughout the universe, causing life to be started on these new worlds. Mostly these were purely elemental beings, but others were holy beings of pure light called the Naru. They looked out over the universe and vowed to nurture all life that was being created. Now, the Naru weren't the only creature being formed looking to do good as well. The Titans were also created in the same manner. Their souls were the cores of these great planets, and when awoken, their sole purpose was to go out and find others like themselves. The Naru, however, took on a different path, one of nurturing and the spreading of hope. Now, the Naru first let their existence be known to the Draenei. So long ago that the Eridari, or the original name of the Draenei, had forgotten where they received it, the Altamal Crystal was an artifact that the three original rulers, and again we know them to be Archimonde, Kil'jaeden, and Velen, had used. Velen, after Sargeras promised great power to all three brothers, used this crystal to accentuate his gift of insight that he had. He had seen what the powers that were going to be bestowed upon them and prayed for guidance. Naru by the name of Kor, I can't pronounce his name correctly, but you understand who I'm talking about, instructed Velen to take the crystal and all that followed him and flee Eridar. Velen was instructed to gather up those he trusted and head to the highest mountain on the longest day of the year. Velen and his people, unknown that he'd been betrayed by a very close friend, was about to be attacked. He had thrusted the crystal upwards, and Kor appeared to just as he had promised. He brought with him a great vessel known as Oshagun, and Velen and his people were able to escape, renaming themselves the Draenei, which means the exiled ones. Eventually, Kor became very ill, and they had landed on a planet which is now known as Draenor. We're very familiar with that, meaning the place of exile. Now, after some major battles in Shattrath City that we're not going to get into right now, and the forming of the Aldor, the defection of the Kael'thas Sunstriders forces known as the Striders, and the willingness to fight Foradal, this is the Naru that we find in Shattrath, Velen came up with a plan. Sometime after the orcs had exiled them into Zangarmarsh, Velen needed to gather more to help in the battles. They took a ship from the Tempest Keep, known as the Exodar, and didn't realize that it was actually sabotaged by the Blood Elves, and they had fled, and eventually had landed onto Azeroth. Now, this is where it ties the two stories together. With that, we now know through the books, the Chronicle book that we just received, that we know that most of the story of the light is pretty much wrapped up in that. There are other connections out there, including a connection with Elune, but that is for another time, and there's a lot of people who say that the Priestess of Elune has nothing to do with the light, but I think we're going to find out in the future that they're very closely associated. Now, on to Shadow Priest and what their source of power is. Natalie Celine was a bishop from Lordaeron that had studied the workings of the orc necrolytes that came through the Dark Portal in order to better understand the fight against them. When she had died, her studies had been locked away. After she was raised as a Forsaken, she reopened her studies and continued her research. This brings us to probably a lesser-known cult throughout the Azeroth history as the Cult of the Forgotten Shadows. This is the religion of the actual Forsaken. The Church of the Holy Light, which is the holy end of the priesthood, has three tenets: respect, tenacity, and compassion. The Cult of the Forgotten Shadow does as well. Respect, tenacity, and power. When transformed into the Forsaken, former priests of the Holy Light lost their faith. They believed they were abandoned by the light and focused on a more self-centered version of their beliefs. The philosophy centers around a self-empowerment instead of an empowerment of others. It's a dark interpretation of the Holy Light's teachings, allowing angerness and bitterness to flow through them. Instead of asking for the benevolence of the light, the Forsaken shadow forces its will on the universe to do its bidding. Being that the undead cannot wield the light, this is why the Forsaken have embraced this religion. Now, another question is also, why are other races able to be shadow priest? And I know I just said there that the undead cannot wield the light, and that is true. But we do have Forsaken priests and human shadow priests. The first question, the reason Forsaken priests can be holy priests. The Forsaken can wield the light. They are undead, but when they wield the light, they do it in an extreme danger to themselves. When channeling the light, they cause great pain when doing so. However, being very strong-willed, and this is what is actually explained to us in a blue post to fortify why priests, or the undead, or Forsaken rather, can be priests. But by doing so, they cause great pain to themselves. They are very strong-willed and are able to tolerate that pain. As for other races being shadow priests, there's really not a lot of information in the lore behind the reason, and I've exhausted about every avenue I can to bring you more information on it. But I am going to try to find out more in the future, and we're going to go ahead and see if we can't get because we're learning more about the shadow priests and their now void power, see if we can't get more information out of the devs for this. Like I said, though, we know that the shadow priests are going to change. Moving to more of the old gods and the void's effects on the shadow priests, they will now fall under the effect of insanity instead of using mana to cast their spells. The more the insanity raises, the more powerful they become. However, this power is fleeting and cannot be maintained. The void form does look badass, and its effects are going to bring the shadow priests back to a fearful opponent that they once were. What we are trying to understand a little bit more on the fallings of the shadow priests is the whole light Naru, dark Naru effect. We understand that the light Naru, or the Naru, can fall under effect of what is called the dark Naru. A lot of times what happens is they fall under this effect when they're ill, to try to regain their strength and reform. One of the most famous of the dark Naru is Muru. Muru was the one that the Blood Elves had taken to extract their power from it. We actually fight him in, not Tempest Keep, but the Sunwell. So as we're in the Sunwell and fighting him, after you hit him down to a certain percentage, he actually transforms into what is known before as a void god. Now with Chronicles being out, and I don't know if it's going to be a little bit of retconning to change him back into what he may actually be now, the speculation out there is that the Light Naru, with the reverse being the Dark Naru or the Void Lords. We still have some more information that we need to find out about that, and hopefully we'll learn more about that when it's coming in with Legion as well. Now, let's take a look at some of the artifact weapons that the priests are going to acquire, starting with the Shadow Priests. Zalatath rather, is called the Blade of the Black Empire. Was a claw that was actually formed from an old god eons ago. This weapon allows you to build on your shadowy power. I like the animations of it. It has an eyeball on it that kind of looks around and blinks every once in a while. Some say it actually has a mind of its own, harkening back to some of the older people that have carried the items before in the past, and having them actually, what they thought was talking to themselves, may have actually talked to the weapon. There is an on-use spell that's pretty badass called Void Torrent. This unleashes a massive shadow damage and allows your insanity to last a lot longer and not drain so fast. And watching some of the gameplay in Legion, when I say drain fast, it drains quite quickly. So this will be welcomed by anybody who is going to be a Shadow Priest. Secondly, we get the Discipline Priest, and they get Light's Wrath. Now, this weapon is said to have been created by the Scarlet Crusade as a second Ashbringer, but in the form of a staff. The staff grants you an ability called Light's Wrath, which is a coincidence, I'm sure, which unleashes a holy fire torrent on its enemy. The weapon is actually pretty nice, and I'm looking more towards this as well. I used to be a shadow or a disciplined priest myself all through Wrath of the Lich King, when I can't wait to actually pick up this artifact weapon. Finally, for Holy Priest, we get Churu, which is Beacon of the Naru. This actually looks like a Naru on a stick. No other explanation for it. From what I can gather, this was actually forged by one of the shards of Atamal. We know that it is formed by a very powerful crystal. There's really not a whole hell of a lot of information on it, but I can, at this time, can neither confirm or deny it. But if you look at the armory site and the information that leads up into the case, it looks like this is actually one of the lost shards of Atamal. And like I said, we had discussed Atamal before. When he did raise it up into the air, the crystal itself was shattered into 7 pieces. We know where 4 of them are. This could be one of the lost 3 pieces that are still left. Also, from what I can see, the on-use ability is called Invoke the Naru, which allows an image of Taru to fight beside you and copy all your spells. And that's pretty much what I have on the priest lore, the lore of the light, and coincidentally the void as well. To finish, though, some tinfoil hatting. When I started doing a little bit of research for this, we've seen it all before. A powerful mage flies into the throne room of the king in raiding form. Somebody's unmuted. And as he lands and materializes, he warns the king of a powerful force that is incoming to the kingdom. The king looks reluctant, and a warning has been given. Their fate is now their own. The blonde, peace-loving prince is distraught. We watched thousands of his people die to the Burning Legion. And can he stop the advancement before he destroys everything? We could say we were talking about Arthas, but we could also be saying we're talking about Anduin Wrynn as well. We know Anduin's going to have a very big part in Legion. What parts those are, I'm not willing to say and give spoilers out on a podcast. But what's going to be neat to see is, does Anduin actually go down the same route as Arthas? You know, or will he be able to fight back his own madness and anger that Arthas was not able to do?
He's kind of a pansy, so I don't really know. I mean, I'm speaking of him as a younger version, right? I mean, obviously he's a king's son, so take that with a grain of salt. Somebody's got some audio feedback. I don't know if it's like a sound of a fan or a air conditioner or something's weird. Maybe it's just me.
With everything that we've seen, though, in Anduin, yes, he was a little crybaby, little sniveling kid when we first met him. Like I said, he's gone through the loss of his mother, his father being kidnapped, being deceived by Onyxia, being, you know...
Maybe that'll make a man out of him then.
Yeah, watching Garrosh...
That's a tough life.
Yeah.
If you've not read the Tides of War book, the Tides of War book is phenomenal because it actually talks about Anduin, and then it shows him going up to Garrosh and trying to make reason with Garrosh.
Somebody has a lot of feedback.
Yeah, one of you two.
I think it's David. No, I've muted myself a few times. I think it's...
So, we see Garrosh... see Garrosh and Anduin talk. And we see them going back and forth. And it looks like he's actually going to be able to change his mind. But, of course, we see him deceived in the end. We also see this kid and about every one of his bones broken in his entire body in the Pandaren process. So, it's going to be neat because I think he's going to have to grow up very quickly. And I think he's already done so a lot right now. And we can actually see him going to the dark side as well, because if you notice, at one point, the little dwarf in Pandaland was trying to get him to go back with them. And he said, no, I think I'm going to stay here, and actually uses mind control on that dwarf. I can't remember. I think Sully. Uses mind control on Sully and makes Sully say, oh, yeah, you know what, Anduin, you're right. Stay here as long as you want. So we already see him going down that dark path. How far he'll go is yet to be seen, though.
Right.